thank God it's Tuesday. Rabbi Friedman, treat and an honor to have you on Radio USA on our weekly program. Thank you so much for your time. So looking forward to hearing your wisdom today. And the topic that we would like to raise today is we are about to embark on the last month of the calendar year, Jewish calendar year, the month of Elul. Very special month, very special time because Hashem comes down to earth. It's a special time of closeness to the Creator. And hopefully he's not going to skip this year with everything that is going on. But the question is, of course, what is so special about this month, the energy of this month, and how can we utilize it wisely?
Yes, it is a very special month. And yes, there is a question about whether God would want to get involved in this mess. Actually, appearances are misleading. We must remember that. Appearances are misleading. The world is much better than it appears to be. So God has no problems with this world, except for the final touches, the details, and so on. But God is very pleased with His world, because just under the surface, or shall we say just behind the newspapers, the world is really, really good. Now this month, very, very interesting how Chabad, Lubavitch, Hasidus has found the inner meaning or revealed the inner meaning of this month's special relationship with God. Traditionally, it was considered a preparation. You have 30 days to get ready for the Day of Judgment, which is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So it was a very serious, a very intense reckoning. You look over the year. What was wrong? What can you fix? How can you repent? All very, very serious, all very, very somber. Chabad Hasidus says that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, it's not just the Jewish people or the world in general that are making the adjustment or the preparation. God Himself is getting ready for a new year. And in what way? He makes Himself more available to us in this month to enable us to get ready for a new year. You can't just go from one year to the next and make a radical change without some preparation. Without the preparation, the new year will come and nobody will even notice that anything changed. So what motivates God to make Himself more available, to help us prepare? What's in it for Him? So the analogy of a king who is usually all year round unavailable, practically invisible to his citizens, to his subjects, because he's in the palace and people can't go into the palace. So the king comes out into the field where the people are working. Of course, he comes without the crown, without the royal garments. That's reserved for the palace. And he comes out to the people working in the fields They're not wearing their Shabbos clothes, their Yom Tov clothes. They're dressed in their work clothes. But that allows everyone to see the king, to greet the king, and to be encouraged by him. What motivates the king to come out to the people? Even when it's not an election year, he's not out stumping and campaigning for your vote. Here's the beautiful thing. So they dream about seeing the king, about coming to the palace, but they would never actually think of going because they would not be permitted. They would not be invited. That desire that the people have to see the king moves the king deeply so that he comes out into the field to tell the people that their desire is realistic. Yes, they are invited. They are welcome to the palace. It's not an idle dream or a frustrated dream. That's what the month of Elul, the preparation for Rosh Hashanah, is. Preparation for the relationship to become deeper, more intimate, more meaningful than it was last year. So how do you encourage a relationship? You let it be known that you are welcoming, that you're also interested in improving the relationship. So I was talking to some people just this week, marriage issues, relationships, and I asked them a simple question. If you were a believer, if you believe that everything in your life is orchestrated, is designed, is meant to be, is purposeful, so that the person you're married to is the person God chose for you. Imagine if you actually believed that you were really convinced. The person you're locked in the house with in this pandemic, yeah, that's the person God chose for you to be with. How would that affect your relationship?
That would make it amazing.
I think the belief in marriage, which means the belief that every marriage is predestined and your spouse is chosen for you by God, all he needs is your consent. He's not going to force you, but if you're interested in getting married, he will introduce you somehow, some way. He will bring the two of you together, and you will marry each other, but because he chose it. Imagine you actually were convinced of that. The first thing that would happen is all the petty objections, all the petty irritations, all the small stuff that we sweat over would immediately disappear. Because if it's meant to be, that is too meaningful, it's too real to even allow a petty thought, much less a petty irritation, to come into the relationship. In fact, even a major irritation, you would struggle to get over it. You would do whatever you can to make the relationship work because you know it's the right one. Without that faith, if you think you arranged the marriage, it was your decision, it was your choice, and now you're thinking it wasn't such a good choice. So, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let's call it off. What's the big deal? Okay, it's a big mistake. So I'm very embarrassed. All right, I'm humbled. But why would I struggle to make it work? It was a mistake to begin with. Why do I have to perpetuate a mistake? And so you undermine the divine element in your marriage, and all of a sudden it's just an agreed upon arrangement, and the agreement was not so good. It makes the marriage flimsy. So the same is true with our relationship with God. It's not I'm the religious type, I want to believe in God, I want to be religious, I want to be a believer. It's not one-sided. And it's not just you suddenly felt a little religious stirrings, and so you decided to check out God and see what you think, or see how it feels. God is looking for you at least as much as you're looking for him. And I think that's the really important message of this month. The reason we're preparing for Rosh Hashanah, the reason Rosh Hashanah is such a special day, is because that's when we get together. But in preparation of that getting together, we have to know it's not one-sided. It's not people who want a religion. And so they latch on to God and become a nudnik and bother him 3 times a day or 5 times a day if you're Muslim without being invited. It's not so. The invitation stands. And not only an invitation on paper, God comes down to this workplace, out to the fields, where you are not ready in any special way. You're not dressed special. You're not doing anything special. And most people would look at you and say, you're not interested in God. You're busy with your plow.
Rabbi Friedman, why does God needs to come down for that last month of the Jewish calendar year if he is in everything at all times?
But he is he's involved in everything at all times from the palace, like a king, runs the whole country, every detail, sitting in the palace. Because all he needs to do is proclaim, right? A proclamation from the king, and it happens. So he doesn't have to come out to the field. He just has to dictate what should happen, and it'll happen. Sitting in the palace. So he is effective, engaged in the entire country, in every detail of the country, but without showing his personal feelings about the country. In preparation for Rosh Hashanah, the king wants not only to be known as the administrator and the authority and the mover and shaker. He wants to make it a little more personal. He became a king by choice. The people accepted him by choice. He's not a dictator. He's a king. The people coronated him as their king. And then all of a sudden it becomes very impersonal. Now the king is doing his job, running the country, making things, and the people see the changes that he's making and the things that he provides, and they're very grateful, and they're proud of their king. But the personal is kind of in the background or underground. The renewal of the coronation is a refreshing of the king's willingness or pleasure in being a king, and the people's pleasure in having him as their king.
Rabbi Friedman, can those who are more spiritual, or as you put it, more romantic, can they feel his presence, actually feel his presence closer during this month than throughout the rest of the year?
Did I lose you there for a minute?
I'm sorry?
Did I lose you there for a minute?
I think so, yes. There was a freeze. You can hear me? I'll repeat my question. So,
how much did we miss over here?
A little bit, maybe 30 seconds. I'll just repeat my question really quickly. So for those who are more spiritual, or as you say, more romantic, you say spirituality is romantic. So those who are a little bit more in tune, more sensitive, do they actually feel God's presence more during the month of Elul than throughout the rest of the year?
Yes. It's a change in the atmosphere, in the spiritual atmosphere. Yeah, God is more available, which means you're more easily inspired. So you see something, it inspires you. Had you seen the same thing a month ago, it would not have inspired you.
Can people use this energy to, or rather, how can people use that energy to, first of all, help the world? Because the world does need help today. And
really? What makes you think that?
Well, everybody wants to help, one way or another. Rabbi Friedman, I'm glad we established the connection again. It's not, I can't see you, but we can hear you, so that's a consolation right there. We can still get the wisdom, and I'm sorry we got interrupted in one of the most interesting places. You were saying about the song, and would you mind continuing from that portion?
After all, this is radio, right? So
exactly.
Okay. So there was this popular song, and the line in the song was, "I can see clearly now, the rain is gone." And that's what happens in the month of Elul. Somehow the atmosphere is clearer, and we can see clearly. So things are more inspiring during this month than during the rest of the year. So even people who are hard to inspire, they're hard to impress, in this month it's easier. And that's because God makes himself more available. Like, when somebody loves you, it's much easier to love back, even if you're not great at loving. You're not the most loving person. But if somebody loves you, now, of course, you have to know that they love you. And that can happen either consciously or unconsciously. Because if somebody really loves you, you're going to feel it, even if you don't hear it. Even if nothing is said, you're going to feel that welcoming that love produces. So that's the idea, that God comes down to the world, the weekday world. He doesn't wait for you to stop working, get all cleaned up and put on special clothing and eat special foods the way we do on a holy day. Here, without all that holy preparation, God makes himself available. to the everyday. But that's in response, this is the romantic part, that's in response to God feeling our desire to be closer to Him. So it's a mutual relationship, which is what every relationship should be.
Rabbi Friedman, sometimes when it comes to relationship, and actually that happens a lot, most of the time we know about the commitment, and feeling the commitment is, it's not as often. It almost seems like a tremendous bonus. How can we make the two come together, such as in this time, in our relationship with God?
Which two?
Knowing and feeling. Knowing the love is there and feeling the love that is there.
Mm-hmm. Well, to some degree, we have to assume that if you know it's there, it creates a feeling. That's the nature of love. So if you know that there is love there, if you know that somebody loves you, it must create a feeling. The question is the feeling strong enough to move you, to move you to action, to do something about it, to change your mood? That's at least the minimum. The minimal amount of emotion that the awareness, the knowledge brings. But it's a very good question. How do we build an emotion that we know is there, we know it should be there, we want it to be there? If you want to love somebody and you're not loving them the way you should, is there anything you can do about that? Or are you helpless? When the love comes, it's there. If it doesn't come, it's not there. There's nothing you can do about it. That idea of like falling in love, you can't make it happen. It just has to happen to you. That is not the real love that we're looking for. That is out of our control, which means that it's an impulse, not an emotion. We're looking for the emotion called love, not for the impulse of love. So when love grabs you, that's not the real thing. The real thing, you can increase, you can control, you can improve, and you can refuse. You can refuse love if it's real love. The love you can't refuse, that's not real. Emotions are voluntary, not involuntary. Hunger, the impulse, that's involuntary. But that's not an emotion.
It seems like everybody has it backwards. It seems like the popular opinion now would be that that impulsive love is the real love, and the one that is created is man-made. Right.
Right. Make me love you. You can't make me love you, then I don't love you either. So we're looking for someone who makes us love them. Yeah, it's not real emotion even. Being real love. The emotion, it's not a healthy individual. So, how do we increase love? You want it, you wish it, and you find expression for it. So if you treat somebody lovingly, it will increase your feeling. If you express your love in words, it increases the feeling. If you do things for each other, it increases the feeling. Where is that expression? You don't do for the person you love the person you do for. So if you've invested action and speech and desire into a relationship, that increases the love. It's not a passive thing that you sit and wait for it to grow.
A lot of people say they want it naturally and they don't want to work on it. What would you tell those people?
Well, it's a misunderstanding. Or it could be a laziness, emotional laziness. But I think it's a misunderstanding because the media and the popular thinking is that love comes to you, not something you have to seek out.
But why is that spontaneous love so much stronger or feels stronger than the love that people work on? Yeah,
that's a problem. It feels stronger in terms of compelling. It's not a deeper feeling. In fact, it's not very deep at all. It doesn't go beyond the surface of the heart. The strength of it is that it's hard to resist, not that it touches you deeply. So there are different kinds of strong. The love that you work on, the love that you choose, the love that you volunteer for, is in a much deeper place in the heart. And because it's in a deeper place, it doesn't force you. It's not compelling. Whereas the love people are looking for is a shallower love, but it's more compelling. And that makes it feel like it's stronger. But it's not deeper. Very much like hunger. The demand of hunger is very intense. It's compelling. Not very deep. In fact, it's not even in the heart. It's in your stomach. I wonder where this compelling love is. On the surface of the heart, not in the depths of the heart.
So how did it come about that in our world today we seek out more of that spontaneous, hot, hard to resist love rather than the true love that you work on, the love that is deeper?
I think it's a general attitude. We want everything for free. We want everything easily. We want everything based on entitlement. So I want love because I'm entitled. If I'm entitled, why do I have to put in effort? Just bring me the love. So it's a general attitude in the free world.
Rabbi Friedman, I can't help it, but I have to. We have only, unfortunately, another 5 minutes, but I have to say it. So many things that we have discussed in the last few months are so becoming a reality. I have to point this out. First of all, what I see around is the people who were never interested in God or just even acknowledging that He exists are now listening. I'm not talking about Jewish, not Jewish. I'm talking about everybody. So people are more interested in what is the information, what is out there, what are we about to embark on, what are we going through. So, people are paying a lot more attention. So that's one thing that I observed in the recent time, and this is like very recent. And another thing, you said that the good is going to come from somewhere where we completely are not expecting. And I think what happened last week about the peace accord between Israel and UAE is just, I think that is it. I don't know. This is just my guess. But since you know a lot more than we do, can you please elaborate on those two? Is the process accelerating based on these few observations and happenings that are occurring in our lives today?
They definitely are.
Mm.
The surprises will keep coming. Now, don't give up on the surprises. But here's very briefly a thought. Democracy is being challenged. Communism collapsed in most places, and democracy is now being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
So is democracy that much more effective, that much more successful than communism was? Or is democracy also a short-lived ideal? What are the flaws in the democracy? Why is it not working all of a sudden? So the things we need to do, and I think that that's what's happening, and you're describing it. What is the relationship between democracy and God? Communism was atheistic. Democracy believed in God. How significant is that? Or is that just a detail? People always thought that the democratic ideal is that people are free to be religious or to believe in God if they choose so. Whereas in communism, you weren't allowed. So the difference in democracy is that it is protected. Your right to religious freedom is protected. That's really not a good description, because that's really shallow. The relationship between democracy and God is much more profound. In fact, democracy doesn't defend religion. Religion creates democracy. The belief in God comes first. Then you can have democracy. It's not democracy defending God. And that's what we're learning very, very, very intensely and very graphically. That without the belief in God, there is no democracy. Belief in God means everything we do, everything we have, comes from Him. Now, take that and create a democratic society. But without that, democracy just turns out to be permissive. The difference between democracy and communism is that communism has strict rules, and in democracy you can do whatever you want. That is so juvenile. That's so shallow. And that's what we're seeing now. People who believe that democracy means you can do whatever you want. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of violence, freedom to riot, freedom to burn. That's democracy. Well, who is to say what the rules are? If you start enforcing rules, well, now you're a dictator. This is a serious problem. So you can't have police anymore. If you have police, well, then you're a dictatorship. So here's how it works. People get together and believe in rules. They have rules that come from the Bible. The right and the wrong, the kosher and the non-kosher, the acceptable and the forbidden. We have all those rules. We have those definitions, and we want them. Now, we elect a government that shares those values and that will help preserve those laws. It's not the government making laws. This is where we tripped up. We empowered the government to make laws. But we don't need their laws. We want them to protect and instill the laws that we believe in, people's laws that come from the Bible, the God-given rights, the God-given right and wrong. You take that away, and all of a sudden the government is making laws. Well, then why is that not a dictatorship? This is serious business. And so, like you say, people are starting to think about God. Where is God in democracy? How necessary is God for democracy? It turns out that he's pretty necessary.
In every which way possible. And we're so happy to be entering in 2 days the month of Elul, a very special month, a month where those who are spiritual, or better word, romantic, can actually feel that amazing closeness, that amazing spirit. And those who can't, if they imagine it, I'm sure they will as well, especially this year. Rabbi Friedman, thank you so much. Thank you for this time that you give us every week, and that wisdom and that light that we have that carries me certainly till the next Tuesday. Thank you so much, and may we, as you said, hear a lot more good news very soon. So thank you very much for today's program.
The way to say it is, when the good news makes it into the news, you'll know Mashiach is here.
Amen. Thank you so much.